You managed to get into where, did you say?
Cambridge, Imperial and a couple others.
Or will your result in this paper affect your offer from Cambridge?
Honestly, I'm someone who tends to get very nervous about the small things. So I think that was the biggest challenge, but also, as I said, the best learning. I think second would be...
He's a very smart man, your dad. Very smart man. But actually, how did you decide between Oxford and Cambridge? Is there anything you wish you had done that you didn't?
I think...
Hi everybody, Gwyn from Rostrum here. I'm the head counsellor at Rostrum, and what we're doing here is Rostrum Talks, and I've got another super smart person who's been very successful. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Arjun Narasimhan. I'm a student at the Shriram School, Molesbury, and I'm someone who worked with Rostrum to apply to my colleges in the UK, and I'm quite happy.
You're quite happy. Why is it that you're quite happy?
I think they were like, you guys were really helpful the entire time, and I was able to get into Cambridge, Imperial and a couple.
You managed to get into where, did you say?
Cambridge, Imperial and a couple other universities.
Excellent. From your experience, because you have been very successful, extremely successful, and the preparation for all of this starts incredibly early. So if I can just ask you, could you explain to them the process by which you actually chose your school subjects, and how much was it strategic?
So I've always been someone who's been very interested in mathematics, and I think that's also what I planned to pursue in university, and that's what I applied for. So for me, I chose subjects which were rated areas in STEM, like I chose physics and chemistry in IB, but I also am very interested in the intersection of math with other fields like economics. So I think it kind of stemmed from that love for mathematics and then branched out into different areas where I saw applications I found interesting. And I've actually lived in Spain for a couple of years. So for that reason, I decided to choose Spanish as a subject. I thought it would be a good way to kind of reconcile with my past.
It's funny because it's Spanish and art and design are the two subjects most of the students have major problems with. So having lived a couple of years there, that's great. When you were making your university choices, were you already aware that there were certain mandatory subjects that you had to have from school, or that there were certain preferred subjects?
Yeah, so I remember seeing on the website, the UCAS website, that you have to take, like, it's strongly recommended to take AHL if you're applying for math. And so that was one area of focus. And I remember when I talked with you initially, you had also affirmed the fact that it's important to take a science at the high level, whether it's physics or chemistry. And so, that's why I guess that kind of, in some ways, backed my decision.
You chose one of the hardest combinations, and which gives you greatest credibility. I mean, it was absolutely excellent. Any regrets about those choices?
I think in the middle there were, like when I was studying for pre-boards, midterms, there was sometimes when I was thinking, because I chose 4 HLs, so it's kind of like, why did I take the 4th HL? I could have just taken 3, but I think it paid off in the end. It was challenging, but it also opened me up to new areas of learning, I guess. I got to go deeper into subjects, and that was something which was interesting, if at times a bit work.
Because I don't actually know. I mean, what is your strategy for studying math?
I just I do 1 or 2 papers and take a break, and then I try not to do too much. So I'll go play downstairs for an hour, talk to family, and then I also mix up for exams. I mix up the subjects a bit, or I mix up topics, so it doesn't get too monotonous.
So no extended periods on one particular subject. It's just mix and match.
Yeah, it's it's 2 to 3 hours, I'd say, per subject, but then I switch it. So I do 2.5 subjects a day.
Okay. And it was past papers, or did you ever do any group study?
Yeah, for Spanish orals, for example, or for English, or even when you're doing some physics, chemistry papers, I do calls with friends and we discuss it, because that often was also a stress bust in a way. It feels less intimidating than sitting and doing a past paper by yourself. And I think that way, studying with friends, whether it was paper or just discussing topics, quizzing each other, was also really helpful in kind of reducing the stress, the tension.
Do you make it as difficult as possible for them? Ask them tough questions.
I mean, no, there was a mixture. I think we always start off easy, and then kind of builds up, getting tougher and tougher till someone can't do a question and then we read that topic.
Okay. All right. That works. And how much emphasis did you put on, if I can ask, how much emphasis did you put on the time management aspects of exams?
For me, I think time management was probably the most important part because it got really challenging at times to kind of find the time to, as I said, go down, have fun while being able to study pretty intensely. So I think at some point I began scheduling my days, what I study each day. I decided when I take breaks. Like,
did you use an app or some software?
It was mainly like paper and pen. I just like made a table and wrote it down. But I didn't make it too intensive because I don't want to burn out too early. But I think like during exams, like the peak exams, like 5-6 hours a day I'd spend studying, and then the balance was. For me, I mean, I write things down to remember. Sometimes my notebook, I'll write down a few concepts or I'll draw a diagram here and there. But mainly, I've been someone who tries to either memorize a concept or see how to actually apply it by doing problems. So I didn't do only past papers after I'd finished the concepts. I kind of did them side by side. I do a concept, then do the paper. And that was kind of how I learned how it really worked rather than like a visual aid. I think one example is in chemistry, we were studying like, these voltaic cells and how they work and the standard cell potential. So that was also one of my topic that I found pretty interesting in class. I remember asking a few questions. So I did the concepts in the textbook, then I read a few other like online sources, like Revision Village. And then I did a few papers, like selecting papers which had those topics and then doing a couple of questions. I found areas which were unorthodox and which kind of were the exceptions to the rule, or places where it seemed unintuitive. And that's when I realized that, for example, electrolytic cells actually follow the complete opposite principles, which somehow hadn't occurred to me earlier. So I think sometimes even seemingly logical things don't actually strike you until you're doing papers. And I think that's what helps a lot.
Great. And you mentioned a website there. What was it?
It was Revision Village.
Are there any others that you particularly use for the math or for the STEM subjects that would be useful for the people in terms of their study techniques?
So personally, I wanted a mix between having some schools which are like the dream schools which are the top of their league for mathematics, as well as having some which are also very good at math, but slightly not as competitive as, of course, Cambridge is one of the most competitive in the world. So for me, Cambridge and Imperial were, as you said, two choices because they're very good at math. And aside from that, I was really interested by Warwick for the Morse program it had, so I applied to that.
Could you just tell the people what the Morse program is?
It's mathematics, operational research, statistics, and engineering.
What does that actually mean?
So it's kind of like it's applied math in some ways. It's about how you apply math to real world problems. Operations research and statistics is a lot about like data analysis, that type of thing. And so that was something that I found interesting and I thought was pretty unique. So that's why I applied to Warwick. And I also applied to Edinburgh and UCL because those were other universities which I saw had very good math, good facilities, and where I thought I'd have a good
track
experience.
records. Yeah. But actually, how did you decide between Oxford and Cambridge? Was it connected to course content, connected to professors? I don't know, any other variables? You're an analytical guy, so I mean, what was your process?
Yeah, I remember I think this was a conversation we also had early on. And for me, that was a difficult choice to make. I think I chose Cambridge over Oxford because it was more mathematically heavy. I think it was more intensive in that way. And it focused a lot on areas of pure maths that I found interesting, like abstract algebra, category theory, stuff that I researched in the past. And that's why I wanted to go deeper into those things. And so that's what led me to choose Cambridge over Oxford, as well as, of course, I read about some professors' work and I found that really interesting. And yeah.
I remember Markov chains. And,
yeah,
okay, exactly. Decide what subject-specific extracurriculars to do.
So for me, there were three main areas I broke it down into. The first was Olympiads, because I know that like in maths, Olympiads are hailed as like this gold standard. For example, Cambridge even hosts the UK team with the Trinity camp, where they host like the top 15, I think, to decide who makes the final IMO team. So I kind of always dreamt of actually making that camp, and I fell short, but for that reason pursuing the UK Math Olympiad circuit with the BMO 1, the BMO 2, that was one thing I did for 2 to 3 years. And in a similar vein, the Indian Mathematical Olympiad circuit was something I pursued. So I think those Olympiads kind of allowed me to cover everything from the basics of number theory, combinatorics, to advanced principles and how to actually write and structure proofs in a more efficient way. I think the second way was in terms of research. I did a paper on pure maths and abstract algebra, and then I did one paper on fraud detection as well. And then aside from that, the third area was courses. I did a couple courses from Stanford ULO and a couple.
Okay, let's go back to the Olympiads because I'm actually curious about this. How much of a difference did you find between the Indian and the British?
Honestly, not that much. Like I remember, I think the INMO, which is the Indian National Maths Olympiad, and the BMO 2 were a week away. So I'd actually use one paper to practice for the other. For example, I'd just be doing BMO papers and that would automatically prepare me for the INMO. There's some differences in how many questions there are and like the time allotted per question, but I think roughly it's the same principles of, being able to approach a problem, finding a correct proof and explaining it clearly, because they all lead up to the same IMO eventually. So I think that's something I found interesting, was that similarity.
How many hours per week, more or less, would you be putting into those at the preparation and everything like that?
I think those were in January. So in like November, December, it wasn't too much. I'd say maybe it was a decent amount of 4-5 hours a week. But then by January, I was focused almost exclusively on these Olympiads, and it was around 3.5, 4 hours a day.
So, 3.5, 4 hours a day?
Yeah, because we had holidays as well from school. So I was kind of...
Are you bored?
No, not at all. I think it was just that and then meeting friends. So I mean, like I said, it seems like somewhere where math won't be applied. So finding that intersection between math and something so tangible and something that affects us in the real world, that was kind of my motivation for choosing this as a research topic. And that's where I was able to find these new, not new, but able to utilize these formulae and laws to actually make more efficient algorithms.
So did you make it more efficient?
Yeah, I think in the internship I made slight improvements, and then writing a research paper afterwards, I managed to strengthen those.
Okay. All right. And is there anything you wish you had done that you didn't in terms of extracurriculars?
I think taking more courses or dedicating more time towards taking courses. Like there were a couple camps in the US, like the SUMAC, for example, that I feel that if I'd applied for a bit earlier or put a bit more effort in my application and actually gone for those, that could have been a very interesting experience of learning alongside people who really love math and are a million times better than me. But yeah.
But again, highly competitive. But yeah, okay, good. All right. I've already started this year, 2025, chatting about the personal statements for the applications with the Oxbridge and Medic candidates. Well, all of the top universities, honestly. It's now April 2nd, and we've just kicked off with that. The format for the personal statement has changed this year. Before, with you, it was 4,000 characters, including spaces, but then it was complete free flow. You could write whatever you wanted, wherever you wanted. Now it's been divided into 3 sections. Why you want to study that particular subject, and then how do your qualifications and subjects at school, how have they helped you with this application? And then the last one, the big chunk, which I think also is more or less unchanged from last year, is about away from education, the extracurriculars that you have done and how they have prepared you and are helping you for this upcoming degree. So what you did was slightly different, but I still think there's a lot of support you might be able to give some of the listeners here. I mean, how did you clearly explain your motivation for math, and what was your process of picking what information and how to talk about it in terms of your subject-specific extracurriculars in order to persuade the admissions tutors?
So I think for me, as you said, something that I did was I tied in the motivation to those extracurriculars. I think for every Olympiad or something that we wrote, there was always some reason why I did it. So, for example, the BMO, I talked about some number theoretic problem that I found interesting in that and that stumped me. And then I think I kind of had this theme about how I've always been curious by just the vastness of mathematics, how there's so many things unexplained and it's always a new problem. And so using that, I was able to talk about my Olympiads a lot, specifically as well as my research, because I think those are the two main ways I have interacted with mathematics. And so that is something I was able to cover. And aside from that, one thing we had discussed was how to like show the areas that I'm interested in within mathematics. So number theory and, as I mentioned, abstract algebra, those two.
The number theory was great, yeah.
Yeah. And so having kind of 2 or 3 anecdotes for each of those, like evidence of where I used it in Olympiads, in research, in course that I did.
Evidence, evidence is the key word, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, you remember. How many drafts did we do eventually?
It was quite a few. I remember, like, I think we had a rough idea by 4 or 5, but then we went back and forth.
No,
I think countless
the
times,
4 or
yeah.
5 is the early work. Could you
Yeah.
give a ballpark number of the total number of times we changed it?
I think at the end by like 20, 25, because we'd end up changing, this one word is slightly.
Yeah, because for me, it's always about don't expect the first draft to be it. It's like, because you've got a long, long way to go. Is there anything you think that might be interesting?
I think for me, it was, I realized that the first couple of drafts I remember weren't really that great. They weren't that cohesive. So I think for me, the main thing was trying to genuinely show my motivation and then building it around that. Not being about how I can fit in everything, but rather about why I actually want to study math, and then everything else kind of flows
Being
from
authentic.
there. Yeah.
Really, but then the tricky bit is finding, well, not with you, but the important bit is finding the evidence to back up, but the authenticity of what you were saying. Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, so I think that was a lot more focused. It was shorter, and it was, for me, completely, it was just about Cambridge, about resource at Cambridge, reasons why I found it interesting. And I think the main challenge there was I wanted to remain, again, completely authentic, because you know that with the UK, whatever you say, they can interview you on. So I made sure that these were resources that I genuinely found really interesting and thought I could see myself working with. So whether it was a couple of professors, as you said, Markov chains at the beginning, or things like the QFIS, I remember something.
It was QFIS came towards the end, I think. And then, what was it? Is it IC2D? That was, what is it?
It was the I think IC2D only. Yeah, it was a data science type, like Center for Data Science, and kind of using
because you'd actually research the research centers that they had coming into your areas of interest. So QFIS, the Cambridge University Finance and Investment side, because you're interested in the economic side of it, and then the data science.
Yeah.
But this is pretty granular. Yeah, it was, and that's the way it should be. But okay, that's after we started out on the personal statement. Then there's this, of course, the admissions tests.
Yeah.
Okay, this is your area of expertise. You have a little think about it, because you had to do an admissions test, because certain courses demand that you actually do a standardized admissions test. For you, that's the TMUA. Is that correct?
Yeah, for everything except Cambridge, it's the TMUA. But for Cambridge, for my year, it's the step which I'm taking in June. So that part hasn't happened yet. But for Imperial, for Warwick, and all the rest, it was the TMUA.
And can you explain a little bit about the TMUA?
Yeah, so basically it's split into 2 sections, and each of them is 20 questions. It's multiple choice, but it's like sometimes there's 8 options, sometimes 5, sometimes 6. So it was challenging, but I realized it's also very similar to like IB maths, except more difficult, of course. And so I think the strategy that I took there was just doing every past paper I could find. I did just a lot of past papers. I started pretty early, I think a month and a half in advance, and I just kept doing papers.
You think that was early, a month and a half in advance? Okay. And to the step now, because if it's a sixth term exam paper, and you've got it's very particular to Cambridge, is or will your result in this paper affect your offer from Cambridge?
Yeah, so my Cambridge offer is conditional on receiving certain grades in there's 2-step exams, step 2 and step 3. Step 3 is just slightly tougher. It covers.
That sounds really Cambridge.
Yeah.
There are hang on a second. There are 2 step papers, step 2 and step 3. Yeah. Okay, fine.
And then based on those, I think there is a condition that I have to meet to like actually get accepted into Cambridge officially. So.
And what is that? And how are the step papers different to the TMUA?
So I have to get a 1 and a 1. And the way it's different is it's very proof-based. There's no multiple options. It's more about you see a problem, you have to solve it, and you have to have working every step of the way. So it's again more like those like national Olympiads, like the BMO. And I think that's where the challenge comes in. Also, there's 12 questions and you will be marked on your best 6. So that's some strategizing in, do you do 6 questions, do you do 8 just to be sure, and do you even have the time to do more than 6? So I think that's one way it's different, and I think it also covers a lot more content. I believe step 3 goes into further math, but mainly it's the application of those concepts which makes it even more difficult.
So when will you start your prep for that?
I've already started my prep around a month, 2 months ago, and then I have boards now, but then I'll continue again in May.
And again, number of hours that you think you're going to be putting in for this?
So when I was preparing in February and last month, I was putting in around, I'd say like maybe 7, 8, 10 hours sometimes. Like when holidays, I was doing 10 hours a week. And then after the boards, I'll go really heavy on it, maybe like 25 hours a week again.
Excellent. So how did you prepare for it? What were your thoughts about when you first considered the Cambridge interview? What were your thoughts and how did you prepare for it?
Yeah, so it was quite daunting at first. I remember thinking this will be like completely new territory altogether, because an interview is completely on the spot. Solving problems just by like verbally is far more difficult, I guess, than writing them in an Olympiad or having time at home to do them in a practice worksheet. So I think the main thing for me in terms of preparation was just practicing. I think we did quite a few mock interviews for that as well. At some point we were meeting, I think, every day almost for mocks, or almost multiple times in a day. And those mocks really helped a lot in the process of observing a problem, seeing how to solve it, and then going about explaining my solution, as well as knowing when I was stuck and being able to sort of know when to ask for help or ask for some sort of hint, or even just show my steps. Because I think for me, a big issue before the prep was that when I hit roadblock, I try to solve it myself in my head. But I think something that you had also said was to vocalize my thoughts. So when I hit a roadblock, I can say that, okay, I can see this and this, but up till here. But after that, it doesn't seem to make sense anymore. And I think that was something which really helped a lot.
The thing with you and with a lot of the Oxbridge candidates is that you're a really fast thinker, or that you're processing a lot of information, and that you're used to doing that inside your head, and by verbalizing can slow you down as you're processing. And also it's very much you have a rhythm or a pattern, because you used to speak really, really, really quickly. Yeah. So how much of a change or a problem was that for you in terms of going from running the problem through in your head to actually verbalizing it?
I think that was honestly one of the main challenges I had, was just kind of slowing it down, taking my time. And I think I kept a glass of water by my side at the end, and whenever I thought I was going too fast, I just take a sip of water and then continue, and that kind of helped me slow down, be able to collect myself and gather my thoughts. But I think aside from that, after the first couple of weeks, I think it became a easier process to kind of verbalize what I was saying and put those. It was the thing I learned the most about, but also the biggest challenge was managing my school exams, my competitions and Olympiads, and university applications and preparation. I think that was the biggest challenge, but also, as I said, the best learning. I think second would be, honestly, I'm someone who tends to get very nervous about the small things. So I think those final revisions before submitting the SOP, the final few mocks before the interview, was where I felt a lot of tension creep in. So I think like kind of brushing that away was a huge challenge. And I think,
sorry, just to come in there a second. So is that because fear of missing out, or fear of missing something, that there was that one word can make all of the difference?
Yeah, kind of was like, oh, what if there's something I realized later I should have mentioned? Does this word really fit here? Should this be a full stop or should it be a semicolon? Things that in hindsight, they probably were important, but I probably took too much stress about them as well. I think finding that balance, working hard on those revisions and making sure it was as good as it could be, but then eventually backing off and saying, okay, this is my best work, I can submit it now. That was like, avoiding the stress was very important.
You mean on revision 25? Okay,
yeah.
Fine. All right. And the third thing, something else, another challenge?
Honestly, the third thing for me was waiting for the results. I think after I'd submitted, that was something that was really stress inducing. I mean, I kept thinking, wow, this is like, I really hope I get in here. What if I don't get in? Did I do this? I did it wrong. That's when the doubts, I think, creep in the most. After you submitted, after you can't control anything. And so I think that 1 or 2 month waiting period was, that was really challenging.
And how did it feel when you got the email, when you saw that there was an email or there was an update on UCAS?
the one thing my dad has told me is to be clear about what you want to do, give your best to everything you do, and then after it's done, don't stress, don't be anxious about the results because you can't change anything. So
he's a very smart man, your dad. Very smart man.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. We're done. Yeah. Cool.
Thank you.
How did that feel?
Good, yeah.